Good morning, friends. Welcome to another presentation of Theosophy by the United Lodge of Theosophies. It should be mentioned today that tomorrow, since we won't be meeting, that 139 years ago, November 17th, HBB and Mr. Judge, as you see behind us, and Colonel Alcott got together and they started the Theosophical Society. And that has evolved into the ULT, even though since that time there have been others that have come forward with the message of Theosophy, but somewhat diluted and not necessarily perverted, but let's say diluted. It is the aim of this lodge, the United Lodge of Theosophy, is to hold true to the original lines laid down by HBB and those who sent her. That being the presentation of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophies. It has no time to take part in side issues of differences of individual opinion. And it holds as the basis of union among Theosophies, however and wherever situated, is a similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching. Therefore, we have no constitution, bylaws, no officers. And each week at this time, we have a presentation by one of the students of one of the some of the principles or some of the philosophy of Theosophy. On the 16th and 17th, 16th, and there's a meeting, in other words, the first and third Sundays of every month on another book that's Patanjali's Yoga Aphorisms, and also there's a discussion group. Today's talk is the Culture of Concentration, Part 2. The reading today comes from the Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter. He who attendeth to the inclination of the senses, in them hath a concern. From this concern is passion created. From passion, anger. From anger is produced delusion. From delusion, a loss of memory. From a loss of memory, a loss of discrimination, and from loss of discrimination, loss of all. But he who, free from attachment or repulsion for objects, experiences them through the senses and organs, with his heart obedient to his will, attains to tranquility of thought. And this tranquil state attaineth, therefrom, shall soon result a separation from all troubles. And his mind being thus at ease, fixed upon one object, it embraces wisdom from all sides. The man whose heart and mind are not at rest without wisdom or the power of contemplation, who doth not practice reflection, hath no calm. And how can a man without calm obtain happiness? The uncontrolled heart, following the dictates of the moving passions, snatches away his spiritual knowledge, as the storm the bark upon the raging ocean. Therefore, O great armed one, he is possessed of spiritual knowledge whose senses are withheld from objects of sense. What is night to those who are unenlightened is as day to his gaze. What seems as day is known to him as night, the night of ignorance. Such is the self-governed sage. The man whose desires enters his heart as waters run into the unswelling passive ocean, which, though ever full, yet does not quit its bed, obtaineth happiness, not he who lusteth in his lusts. The man who having abandoned all desires, acts without covetousness, selfishness, or pride, deeming himself neither actor or possessor, attains to rest. This, O son of Pritha, is dependent upon the Supreme Spirit, and he who possesses it goes no more astray. Having attained it, if therein established at the hour of death, he passes on to nirvana in the Supreme. And now the presentation of today's talk, Culture of Concentration.
Thank you. In our presentation recording from October 26th on the culture of concentration, it was noted that the power of concentration of thought distinguishes the great ones from the common herd. And we all can and must learn thought concentration to place the mind where we will, when we will, and for long as we please. In the words of the voice of the silence, the mind is the great slayer of the real. Let the disciple slay the slayer. So we must get rid of hindrances to concentration. That's a first step or we go wrong. These hindrances are anger, envy, vanity, and fear. We also talked about the 4 obstacles to concentration. The natural tendency of the mind to fly from a fixed point, the brooding over pleasurable ideas, being lost in unpleasant thoughts, and passivity. So from the true power of concentration, we begin to open the channels that reach from our brains to our astral body and to the inner man. That's why concentration is so important. Then that which is temporary tends to be eternal. This is the real us right here. So in the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna advises Arjuna to control his mind, to see for himself the real value of things, not to get clouded by his feelings and attachments, or by what he sees or what he hears. In other words, basically our 5 senses, dependent on his own senses. Krishna uses only 2 words in saying how to attain unto self-control. That is, vairagya or dispassion, and abhyasa or practice. These Sanskrit words are not really frequently translatable to English, the merchant's language, and that's why eventually we're going to wind up having that as Sanskrit as a main language again. So by gaining dispassion and through unrelenting practice, by that alone will control of the wandering mind be attained. We must cut the bonds of attraction and repulsion, of the pleasure-producing and pain-giving desire nature. By constantly memorizing the great and the good, the true and the beautiful, we come to realize what the law is and what the applications are for dealing with our conflicts. This comes out of the Bhagavad Gita. Theosophy lays the necessary foundation for understanding how to control the wandering mind by first considering the psychology of the human organism, the body, the brain, the sense organs, the senses, the desire nature, the feelings, the attractions and repulsions produced by love and hate, and ultimately the thought-producing machine, which we call the mind, and beyond all this, the immortal man, or the inner man. The thinker himself, he who makes use of his machine, he who gets the experience and stores it away in the shape of his faculties. The mind is very much mixed in us with that principle we call desire, back to the desire nature. All of our thinking is energized, or is energized in turn by our desire nature. The mind principle and the desire nature in us are so closely aligned that in ancient psychology, as in modern theosophy, they are put together, namely mind desire, or kama manas in Sanskrit, which we desire, that which is desire and mind combined is what all of these terms basically mean. That principle is so strong in most of us that it practically assumes the place of what it is called the soul, and this real I, the ego, or this ego, or this voice of conscience. So these are basically the same. That's the higher manas we're talking about when we're dealing with these, or the conscious, and the voice of that which is, the voice of that which is conscious. So kama manas, we can think of that as like scaffolding, which has now served its purpose, and that now obscures the voice of conscience that should be our guide. We must now take down that scaffolding right here in this little illustration that separates the two mind functions we talk about, the higher mind and the lower mind, and that's known as the Tuscarora Bridge. That's scaffolding, and this is mind that we're talking about here. So we must take down that scaffolding because this kama manas affects and is affected by all the lower principles, the thinker, the soul, the ego, who is going to come and reside, and is affected when he begins to work through the instrument of mind by the four lower principles, which are down here. We need to get all these working together is what all this boils down to, and not let this control everything, which is what's going on typically in us now. So to illustrate what we're talking about in terms of mind, let's look at the embryo. So in development, it passes through all the stages of the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms, and then only then does it show forth its human body characteristics. Also, in our psychological development, we pass through all the stages of the mind. We have generally run through the early stages in quick succession. The process is now slackening and becoming slow, and a longer and longer period is necessary as we keep going. In the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is this book right here, which is translated from Sanskrit, we come across all the stages that we are going to take up, but perhaps the version summarized in the handout which we have to pass out here. And also there's a picture taken of that handout in front of this recording, but if you can't get a good view of it, please give us a call or email us, and we'll be happy to get a copy to you. So this handout may be clearer to the Western mind. It's grossly summarized there, and we'll talk about each one of the items. First, we have the instinctual mind. This instinctual mind, this is the first of the 5 kinds of minds that we're talking about today. So it's the mind that runs wild, also known as the wandering mind or the butterfly mind. It has no reasoning power. This activity of the mind affects and is affected by the physical body. The impressions come from the outside. I see a thing or I hear a thing, and without any further process, without reasoning, I make a quick response. This is the mind of a typical child up to 7 years old. But the minds of many people never grow up, and they continue with this type of mind. Likes, dislikes, and reasoning power have not yet arisen in them. So they just they react in an instinctual fashion. This instinctual mind, this wild mind, is called in Sanskrit Kshabda. Sri Krishna describes the quality to grow out of this. He does it to grow out of this mind, this type of mind, or this stage of development, is vairagya, or dispassion, even-mindedness. If we were to understand the system of Patanjali, our educational system would undergo change. Because the instinctual mind grows and ages up to 7 years old, there is no use bothering the child with spiritual and emotional things. The predominant habit of mind is cultivatable in this period. Therefore, give the one quality, dispassion. And this dispassion will become so natural to the child that all its life the child habit will reassert itself. It will be dispassionate in all its expression and its outlook. Then we come to the confused mind. Many of us can relate to that one too. But when we've grown up, we've come to that state of mind that Patanjali speaks of as mudha or pre-mudha, or as the confused mind. It is this second stage, the mind that asks questions and confusion arises, or in the second stage, the mind asks questions, confusion arises in proportion to dispassion acquired by the mind in earlier years. Conflict takes place, and ignorance and knowledge alternately show themselves. In the instinctual mind stage, there is an intense movement engendered by the mind to do something. In the confused mind stage, that intense movement receives a check, and there is a struggle, and the question arises, which is the better for me? To come out of this state, we need to develop virtue, which is the virtue of practice, that one, upon you. Therefore, between the ages of 7 and 14, we want to give the child seed ideas on which they will dwell over and over again, on the laws of life which they will understand and apply. Every time that the conflict of duties arises in their mind, they will have these seed ideas. Next we come to the infatuated mind. The front ranks of today's civilization are in the very important infatuated mind stage. They are infatuated by a fixed idea. It may be good or it may be bad. It may make a man a martyr or a fanatic or a lunatic. No amount of argument will convince such a mindset that they are mistaken. This type of mindset is typical of the 14 to 21-year-old. If a person gets infatuated with the spiritual idea, the future years of life will be right and spiritual. In the ruling passion of the infatuated mind, that determines either the wrong or right kind of wrong or right kind of marriage. So this is an important stage, infatuated stage. There are people who get this infatuated mind late in life because their life principle has not kept the same pace of the development of the body. So the education of the child, in that education, we want to watch to see that the psychological and the physiological principles move side by side. And we know in this day and age they are pretty much out of kilter. Okay, just as a confused mind is the result of the confusion between the superstructure of the body, okay, and the foundation, the design body of the astral body. So this infatuated mind comes out of that principle in us, which we speak of as prana, or the vital energy. The prana is over on this side over here. It's the very soul of vitalizing forces is prana. When we are obsessed by the one fixed idea, we pursue that idea so steadfastly that at last we come to one-pointedness, which is the next mind we're talking about. Patanjali refers to the position of the one-pointed mind as ekagrata, is the Sanskrit word. The one-pointed mind is a mind that is fixed on one point at any given moment, but it can go from object to object deliberately with a set purpose and will. The infatuated mind, which has not yet achieved one-pointedness, will get very cross and irritable when disturbed while fixed on one idea. But one who has got a one-pointed mind will ask you to stop for a minute, make a mental note, put down his work, talk, and when the conversation is finished, go on with his work again. Although the infatuated mind may work concentrated until exhausted, also the infatuated mind may work concentrated until exhausted and then relax the mind. But the one-pointed mind requires no relaxation. The one-pointed mind will work at serious pursuits and recreation with equal zest and equal joy. For the one-pointed mind, drudgery has become divine. Now we come to the detached mind. So in this fifth stage of the mind development, it is one-pointed everywhere. It does not get exhausted when it comes into contact with other thought, with other ideas, or other mental objects. It remains in its own state and visualizes all conditions with detachment. Imagination has become a scientific habit. Such a mind can visualize a condition as if it were before him. You ask such a person to describe a period of history, the detached mind can make an image and visualize it. You ask for a picture as to what is likely to happen under a given set of circumstances, and the detached mind can reconstruct the situation and see. Most people are hovering between the infatuated mind and the confused mind, which is up here. Most of us don't get to that yet. We're working on it. So in looking at the virtues column of the handout there, we see dispassion, vairagya, practice, abhyasa, faith, shraddha, energy, virya, and wisdom, prajna. When we get infatuated, we have faith, not in our idea, but in ourself. And you will come out of it. Faith is not faith in somebody or something, but faith in oneself that is so strong that it questions one's fixed ideas. That is the way to get out of it. So far, there is only the will to live. But one-pointed everywhere energy produces the will to do. thing which modern humanity needs. We need a lot of will to do, every one of us. What we really want today is not more knowledge, and we already desire to do good, but every one of us needs the will to do. That will to do is lacking, and it is lacking because this higher mind is absent, this higher mind which is one-pointed in all places, that inner man being in charge, which is becoming detached so that it can see as a detached spectator all the affairs of life. The energy to attain, to do, and finally wisdom, prajna. The detached mind does not bring knowledge, but wisdom. For the English poet Cowper, knowledge dwells in the head replete with thoughts of other men. Wisdom in minds attentive to their own. So wisdom springs up from within because the detached mind is dependent on its own intuition. He sees detachedly good, bad, and indifferent purposes in the things he contacts. His writings and utterances have unquestionable authority. So most people first want dispassion, so they won't remain ignorant. Coming back and going back down the line again. Krishna says, every time the mind wanders, bring it back and put it before this mind, the one idea which is the true medicine. Then we want faith. We have faith in other people, in all kinds of philosophies, and all kinds of movements. But the real faith, the self-reliance, and the self-dependence has not yet awakened. Our minds awaken to that faith through our mistakes. When the fixed idea breaks and we have survived our errors, self-confidence is gained. That is why Manu's doctrine is that self-dependence is happiness, other dependence is misery. So we want dispassion, constant practice, and faith. Faith which relies on itself and not on any person, however high and however holy, nor any book, however ancient or however sacred. That is the training of the mind. We might, when our mind wanders, put our mind in the instinctual mind, the confused mind, or the infatuated mind category. If instinctual, we now know we need to apply dispassion. If confused, apply practice. And if infatuated, apply faith. According to the stage of our mind, we will find our rules of life. These rules of life will furnish us with seed ideas, our words of power, which we have to repeat over and over again. Just mindlessly muttering them produces no result. We must understand the living words as we doggedly and steadfastly practice in dealing with our smallest daily affairs. If we act wrongly in a supreme moment of test, it will be because we missed practicing every day. Also in the spiritual life, there is no small or great actions. All actions are equally great. We must have faith in ourselves and not be troubled if we go wrong. Anyway, if we blindly follow others, we most likely will go wrong. Now, these rules and laws are found in this teaching of modern theosophy, including the aphorisms of Patanjali, and which come out of the Gita, and that comes out of, this is the ancient doctrine, the secret doctrine also includes. and it actually is passing down to us. Okay, they apply to everyone. Persistently following the rules leading to control over the mind is the way out of life's worries, pain, suffering, and it is a path to the masses of wisdom found through the inner life, the life of the heart. So that's the prepared talk today. We're going to open it now for comments. I know there's a lot of things that got thrown out here in a summary fashion that we may want to pick up on and discuss further, or maybe if the student has missed something to bring that out, etc. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys for question and answer, you ladies and guys. While we're waiting for the mic to get to the right person here, this aging process, the age range is up to 7, and then it recycles 63 to 70 and so forth. We keep hearing about being in our second childhood for older folks. Well, that's in this chart kind of. And 7 to 14, and then it recycles again in 56 to 63, and it's infatuated 14 to 21, and 49 to 56, and one-pointed 21 to 28, and 42 to 49, and then detached 28 to 35, and 28 to 42 really is that middle part of life where we should be in a detached situation. Two hands went up to whoever decides there first.
Well, this is very interesting, but does many people actually achieve this stage in life, in one life, this one-pointedness? Because if we were to truly achieve it, then humanity would have quite a few people able to solve coordinated problems that we suffer from.
And this chart is the progress that Pangeli points out is what should be typical. We are way off from that in our modern day world. When we get to the point where we have gone through lifetimes and lifetimes of experience, we will eventually get back to what this chart lines up as. That's what the student understands. So we don't take that as a snapshot of where we're at today for sure. It's an evolutionary process.
It seems like humanity is concerned with 1, 2, and number 3 that you have listed on here. That what this is stuff we see around us today. A lot of people going to church is also a kind of infatuation, and on the other side we have all these radicals that are infatuated, so they don't seem to be able to break through the infatuation to go to one-pointedness, where actually the spiritual life expresses itself, and that is when cooperative effort solves problems.
That's right, and I think that you put your finger right on it. Typically in our society these days, the more advanced minds are in category 3, infatuated. It's very difficult to think past that for most of us, because why? One reason is we have our out there, that outside God, and that's one reason why all of this is laid out before us. We see that this outside is not really outside, it's all over. So we are representatives of that one. We have to understand who we are, man, know thyself. And as we understand that, these things will kind of fall into place better. And we get glimpses of the one-pointed side, the detached mind and so forth, But yeah, those are spiritual, largely spiritual in nature when we get to that point. So that's why the writings here also say exactly what you just said, that most of us don't have to go beyond the infatuated category, the third category. We find ourselves in one of those three.
That's sad.
Yep. But it's sad, but it also presents us with a challenge. We're in this age of Kali Yuga, it's the Doric ages. So we can accomplish more in this period than any other time. And we think we're modern because we have all these material goods around us, but we're fooling ourselves. And once we realize that, then we have this chance to advance further in our thinking process. And I see a person back there with a smile on his face, and he is just itching to say something. So.
Well, I may be off a little target here, but I was thinking about, since you mentioned in the second childhood stage, 63 to 70, elderly people, they get dementia or Alzheimer's. Now, I don't know, just speaking as we're speaking right now, if that's like biological, something to do with the brain, but it affects the mind. They say that they're kind of losing their mind a little bit. Now, is that a natural process in terms of the second childhood, them losing it, becoming more, whatever term you want to put there? Or is that because some kind of way they have it, because there are older folks who don't go into that? I know it's karma overall, but is this aging in the mind? And I guess what I'm trying to come to, the direct question, how does aging affects the mind?
We have to first think about separating brain and mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The brain is a vehicle.
Right.
It is a mechanical vehicle of the mind. And yes, the mind in the higher aspects affect the brain, he said.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking about, in a dis-ease situation, a dysfunction, if you will, and the medical people can talk to this better than I can, way better than I can. But it's dysfunction because it's not, it's broken somehow. And you might even find a person who has been doing fine up until whatever age, and then they kind of flip out. That is a physical process, and that does not talk, in this student's understanding, to the state of their higher development. It's when that physical process is detaching itself in the final stages of life. Frequently it happens in a different way. It's also said that if we, whatever we use, we keep longer. And this is not a rule. This is not a certain hard and fast rule. But frequently you hear of people who are very active in high level pursuits, of Theosophy being one, don't tend to have as much of a problem. You mentioned Alzheimer's. This student has been told that they don't have as much of a problem with that if their minds are active.
Yes, that's what I was trying to get to. If persons were involved in spiritual type activity, that would seem to counter some of that stuff that would come up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen in all cases, because you hear about situations too where people are on the right track, and their egos get inflated, and toward the end, they lose it.
Yeah.
So this is the teachings we have here. We have to make of them what we will. We have to maintain that balance, the instinctual, if you would, what we're talking about, where we need that to get out the dispassion. We have to pay attention to dispassion all of our lives. Because if we don't, we're subject to error, even though we could be very far advanced on the path. Comment, question here.
Well, in the voice of the silence, actually, it says that we have to regain the child state. And here
Exactly.
you're saying that up to that point, which is up to 7, which is instinctual, is going to recycle itself and come back to us at 63 to 70. So
Hopefully we'll have wisdom by then too.
but maybe the second time around, if you haven't achieved it in your early life, here it is a second opportunity to get out of that.
Sure.
From 63 to 70, you can still drop it. You can improve yourself and move along. Because when you think about it, you have done all of your family duties, responsibility to your children, so you have more freedom, so to speak, to pay more attention to your spiritual aspects. And perhaps it is easier to let go of the passion and reach this passionate stage where you can disperse all of your goods and things that you do not need anymore as extra luggage.
That's kind of like wisdom, right?
Well,
when you've gone through all of the current life experience and you've had all these past lives that most of us are not aware of right now.
we're talking about this particular one, that you
current
have had
life,
the
yeah.
experience of life, and so that also teaches us, and when we go towards the end, you can kind of sift through all of the experiences you have gone through, and it becomes easier to let go.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
Now, I don't know, for some reason, I know this is psychology. Patanjali would come under Eastern psychology as well as philosophy. So this seems to be a fusion of philosophy and psychology. I'm trying to think. The mind is this. I just have a bundle of thoughts just rushing through like stream of consciousness. I'm thinking about monad. I'm thinking about mind. I'm thinking about philosophy. I'm thinking about this gift of mind, meaning that, and I'm thinking about reason also. What all this seems to, let's start with reason. Can you meditate, and what's the difference between reason and meditation? I mean, is there a spiritual reasoning? All this seems to be based on sort of like meditation, one pointedness, stuff like that. Is there a point where you could begin to reason to get to some higher states in this development here?
Well, I think reason is a process of building up to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but in this student's understanding, when we get to the higher level that you're talking about, the one pointed, when we get to the highest levels, it is beyond reason. This is everything altogether. It becomes part of you. For example, we can think about we talk about the animals.
Mm-hmm.
They are perfect in their responses based on where they're at in the scheme of things. Okay, they know what to do, and they're really they don't think about it. They just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're heading in this process to the point where when the detached mind just knows, and they just know the answer. Or they react in an intuitive way with all this experience. So that they in other words, it's instinctual, except at the very highest level, if you can think of it that way.
Okay. I'm thinking also of mind, because all this culture of concentration of the mind. Now, see, mind is a principle, and somewhere in the literature it states how the monad was thrown down as a plank of salvation for for humanity. And I'm thinking in the same way, in the thing of Prometheus, still in the fire from the gods of Olympus, that's the lighting up of mind. So mind is thrown down also. But, when mind is given to mankind, from the pea trees that light up the mind, the solar pea trees, something like that. Is mind is basically a principle, this divine principle that's given to this thing called humanity to work with. I mean, it's like a father gives a son $1,000,000, and here you can work with it in the material world and do what you want with it. You can do all kinds of things, have all kinds of experiences with $1,000,000, supposedly. So mind is this thing that's given to humanity, so like free of charge, in a sense, for lack of a better expression. And you could do wonders with it, just like on a lower level. You could do many things with the $1,000,000. But mind is needed. Mind is needed. And one of the tools to get to, let's say, if you become sort of like aware that there's a higher things for mind, but just left alone, just like a kid that's left alone can squander the $1,000,000 and go nowhere. So if it's just left alone, its tendency would be to do what? Would there ever be some impulse to go higher? That's what the general drift of nature, self-impulse, self-induced, self-devised efforts. But so far, But in the human kingdom, is mind just wanders forever and ever? I just got a lot of thoughts I'm running through.
And I like the way you ended up. I didn't necessarily go along with everything you said.
Well, may I make a comment?
Sure.
We were talking about the lower kingdoms and they being instinctual, but their instinct is precision oriented. We also had it, but we lost it. When we were given the mind, we did not go in the right direction, because the mind, as shown there, this thing here, put some zigzags here.
Put some zigzags where?
Here.
Right here?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
That mind is a gift to us from the solar Agnishwatha Pitris. It is a tremendous gift because it made us reasoning human beings. But that's only the lower aspect. The intellectual aspect of that mind is the lower aspect of it. And in humanity, at this stage as we are today, this is what is most developed. With that desire principle in conjunction with the lower mind, kamamanas, it causes havoc because it is selfish and personal oriented. It has no concern for anything else outside of itself. But it says that we as humanity have developed that aspect to such a degree that we're truly retarded in our progress, because we should have overcome that by now and should have been accessing the higher principles of the mind. Remembering that over there's also soul. Mind is the vehicle of the soul, but with the distinction that when the soul and the mind, when the mind is preoccupied with something, the soul is also drawn into it and it becomes one with it. So our soul nature and our mind nature work together. If we then tend towards our higher aspect, which is the last part of your question, what would that be? That we have now overcome our animal nature, we have become humane, and from humane we're going to access the divine. So there's a progression, but after the middle of the fourth round, it is not propelled by nature anymore, because the human kingdom has reached its midpoint, and it's circling towards the spiritual life. And that requires self-induced, self-devised effort. Up to the middle point, nature pushes everything forward. But we no longer will be pushed forward. We are dependent on ourselves as to how we are going to use our powers, including the mind. That is why the Patanjali's yoga aphorisms we're studying is so very important, because it enables access to the process that we have to follow in order to reach one-pointedness.
And you mentioned nature a few times, and just to add to that, yes, we are at a point where if we need to take self-induced and self-devised efforts, but by the same token, it's also said in the writings that nature is here for our development. So, and also it says in the voice, we need to work with nature, and by doing this self-induced and self-devised efforts, we learn more and more about how to work with nature and become one with nature. As we become one with nature, we're also achieving these higher states.
Well, those states come about automatically. It's an internal growth process. It's the soul becoming aware of its inner aspects. It cannot be put in from the external.
No.
It's the soul awakening to its own possibilities. That's why this is self-induced, self-devised. Each soul knowing what they're here to do and choosing how to achieve that end.
You have to evolve. Nature evolves within, without. We do too. And if we totally dependent on what's without, we're not going to get it.
No.
And that's what's happened these days.
Our earth, it is stated in the Secret Doctrine, also evolves from inside out. It has a regent, and it's subservient to all the other divine or holier planets of our solar system. So Earth is alive. It's evolving from inside out, as does the human soul. It evolves from inside out. That is why Theosophy, or wisdom of the ages, cannot be accessed or obtained from the outside. You have to make it a living power in yourself. That's where self-induced, self-devised effort comes in. Are you after obtaining it for yourself, or are you here assisting nature and all of humanity to move forward? We're not without our elder
Could
brothers.
you please speak to the mic?
I'm sorry. We're not without helpers. Those sincere students who understand the process and are putting all of their effort into it get help. We have a brotherhood, our elder brothers who brought this philosophy out into the world. They are on the lookout for awakened inner lights, so that they can use all those who are able to assist. And HPB was here not just to give information or knowledge, but she was also preparing a student body to carry this work forward.
Which gets into what we're here for. We're supposed to be doing that. That's the intent. The intent of us, our development, is to get to the point where we can be of greater and greater help to humanity, to nature, to the masters.
You can stand up and be counted.
Like Jesus said, you can do greater things than me.
Absolutely.
Well, that's our expectation, I think, from the evolution process. But we have to make it happen. Nothing out there is going to make it happen.
You mentioned virtues, and those are necessities, because it removes the negative out of the whole being and puts the positive in. What is the negative and positive? You talked about love and hate, for instance. But if you're concentrated on love and compassion, the other part drops off. And not only from you, but everyone around you, and then eventually from your community, from your nation, and it spreads all the way outward towards the universal community, which is humanity at large. And that is the aim, that as many of us help move the mind in the right direction.
Exactly.
Thank you.
The person behind you looks like he wants to talk.
The writing on the board there, brain, astral body, inner man. Is the inner man connected to the astral body?
That's the bridge here.
The inner man is the inner man the astral body, or is there a body, astral body that the inner man
The astral
is a
body
part of?
It is what we don't see, but it's actually has an imprint. It actually turns out to be the body itself.
Okay.
Physical and material
All right.
level.
So that's the inner man. It
The inner man.
exists in the astral plane.
Oh no, I don't think it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this astral plane is, in terms from a spiritual standpoint, this is understanding is, it's getting into the material. It's a transition.
Okay.
But this up here is not
Okay.
technically there. So
And-
it's a transition issue.
And dispassion in practice, and I'm not going to try to even deal with the Sanskrit words, Hindi words, whatever they are.
Sanskrit.
Sanskrit. Was it? How you pronounce those words?
Sanskrit?
Yeah.
You
Dispassion.
want to know?
Dispassion.
Dispassion?
Yeah. And where does that come in?
Vairagya. That's the first thing we have to be taught as children.
Dispassion.
That's what we started in the instinctual mind, the chart you have.
Uh-huh.
That's the instinctual mind. We first have to learn dispassion, which is balance and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and keep that process as we progress down the line here.
And,
So
and,
let's dive in with that.
okay, and practice? Practice what
Practice is once we, that's what 7 to 14, I believe, and then later on in our careers, we learn to play fair and things like that is what we should be doing anyway. And seed ideas gets into being, and being true to those seed ideas, if you will, and practice that every day, because if we slack on it, we're not going to be in a position to be able to react in a correct way when what we think is an important thing comes along.
I see. So is it safe to say that the inner man, the soul, is originally virtuous?
The inner man is virtuous.
And
Not originally,
and-
it is virtuous.
well, we also live in a world of vice.
The inner
The
man,
opposite. I'm not talking.
the inner man is up there.
Inner man. I'm now asking about the world that we live in.
Yep.
And the world that we live in is another question. It's not the inner man any longer. It's the world we live in.
Yep.
And that world consists of not virtue, because that's apparently what we're trying to attain, or
We're raising all this up. Yep.
right. So that the world must be vice, inculcated. All right, the world must be inculcated with vice in order for there to be a struggle between it and virtue, which is where we're trying to become. We're trying to emphasize the virtuous aspects of man's soul, and not get confused by the attraction that man has to his kama manas, so to speak.
Exactly. Well, in other words, this is not in control right now. This seems to be in control. The intellectual mind, that the personal mind. That's is about as high as science goes, you know. But we kind of ignore up there. This is that voice within. That's that conscious. And our objective is to try to let that be our guide. Yes, we need this vehicle while we're here. There's not, I mean, every part is important. But the idea is to get these parts in line with what's up here. And as we do that, this part here, the inner man, that eternal, is a continuing better process, because that inner man is not going to reach down to the lower. That lower has got to demand. You've got to take the kingdom of heaven by violence. It was a statement in the last talk on this subject. So why don't we just stop it here, unless you
Okay.
got something going?
No.
Okay, and turn off the camera, and we will have a snack, and then get on with our afternoon reading and discussion for another hour or so.
So, how do I put this over?
Just push the red button.
Oh, this one.